I don't know if you're in the dancing mood too. I mean, you see all the jubilation and victory dance over in Osho. But tell us, were you expecting this from the Supreme Court?
I would have been surprised if something else was, another judgment was delivered by the Supreme Court. You know, Nigerians, the tension is very high. The presidential election tribunal just started, and people are worried about what is going to happen in the Supreme Court. In fact, I told a friend that the Supreme Court cannot even afford to make what Nigerians will perceive as a mistake at this point, because the tension is going to create would have been difficult to manage, considering the fact that Nigerians everybody wants to know what is happening in the judiciary, especially as regards the election petitions.
All right, so this judgment throws up a lot of new learnings and I'm sure for lawyers like you also, there are some novel insertions in the judgment as been given by the apex court, and is also one that would serve as a precedent for future cases, particularly as they come, before the Supreme Court. The judgment, part of the judgment says, for example, that the APC relied on only data from the back-end server, and then they should have also, put its hands in the voters register. So right now it seems like for you to particularly have a watertight case, for example, you have to, of course, the back-end data, and then of course also we'll be looking at the voters register. How do you react to this novel development?
First thing, what you actually need to do is to look at the facts, because if there is a conflict between the backroom server and the beavers and voters register, which one will be primary? From the information, they said, as at the time the information that the APC used for the tribunal was gotten from the INEC, that the server was still downloading. So if the server was still downloading, that means there will be a conflict between what you have in the server and the actual beavers that was used for the conduct of the election. And of course, when you are talking about overvoting, it's equally important that you make reference to the registered voters, and then from EC8A, where you have the result. If what you have at the backroom server is saying that 20 people voted, because probably it was still downloading, but you have the result that was issued to agents at the polling unit, that 20 people actually voted instead of 8 people. And then the beavers is saying that people who were accredited to vote is probably 22, because it's possible that somebody who was accredited to vote did not vote. So you cannot say no, that the back end is saying 8 votes, therefore it's only 8 people that voted. You can't say that. And the people who decided to use and rely on the back end server knew there was a conflict between what they have at the back end server was different from the beavers, which was actually used at the polling units, and even the voters register, and even the form SEE, which their agents have too. For instance, you sent an agent to come to AIT polling unit to work for you as an agent, and he comes home, and in what you have from the agent, he's saying from ESA, he's saying that 20 people voted, and he rushed to INEC when the thing was still downloading, and it has 8, and you decided to even ignore what you have, the information you have, to use that. And I don't think I think it's not a rocket science, because the Supreme Court is saying no. If there is a conflict, you rely on the primary source of information, because it was the information that, in fact, from what is it called, that is actually used to transmit to what you downloaded. So why wouldn't you make reference to what you have? So I think it's actually a very straightforward thing, and it's unfortunate at the end of the day, the entire electoral process and all that will eventually boil down to maybe one issue or 2 issues. If it has gone negative, probably Adeleke has lost the election. and it may end up not having much to do with what actually happened on the ground on that day. Just issues raised in court.
All right, let's move to the crux of the matter today, which of course everyone is looking at in the front papers daily. It's the 10th Parliament and what would happen in the National Assembly in a couple of weeks now. On Monday, there was this letter that was released. You know, the APC came out to say, well, whether it is purportedly true or not, that they have endorsed, of course, former NDC chair, Godswill Akpabio, minister, I beg your pardon, as the senator-elect to go for the president of the Senate. And then they also looked at the National Assembly and talked about Tajuddin. And there has been a lot of back and forth on this. Yesterday, there was also a meeting of the Southeast, caucus in terms of the House of Representatives and some of its members on this particular matter. And one of the things that the letter reads is that, this is a preferred candidate chosen and endorsed by the president-elect. This has raised a lot of issues. What do you think is happening at the moment, especially when you look at this letter? Do you think that this is something that can either make or mar the process of the president-elect's choices?
Well, first of all, I need to correct something. What is happening is that the president-elect has made an appointment for the National Assembly, which I don't think is necessary, because as the president-elect, he has statutorily over 55,000 appointments to make. Heads of ministries, starting from the ministers, heads of agencies, DGs, and heads of departments. And going beyond that to make, if you look at Section 50 of the 1999 Constitution as amended, it stipulates that the members of the National Assembly will elect among themselves. If you look at the standing orders of both chambers, and they said that the first business on their resumption date, after the proclamation, the first business is election of the presiding officers. And it's only when you have elected a presiding officer that you can now read any correspondence coming from anybody to the members. So at what point would that be implemented? Unless they are going to say, oh, an appointment has been made for us and we are going to endorse it. If people put the appropriate name to what has happened, they will understand it better. Because yes, the APC governors did zoning, saying that they are expecting the Senate president to come from either the south-south or the southeast. Fantastic. Zoning is good because it helps, it's advisory. Please, if you are doing that for us to balance power in our government, look towards the south-south, look towards the southeast to elect your president, the presiding officers of the National Assembly. There's nothing wrong with that. But the moment you attach a name to that and forward it to them, number one, you have made it impossible for them to do election again because you have made an appointment. And the implication is that somebody who has appointed the presiding officers will be involved in nomination of appointment of all other members of the leadership of the House. The principal officers, because you have a presiding officer and you have principal officers. And if the person is involved in the appointment of the principal officers, he will equally be involved, because people who lost out in the presiding and the principal officers will want good committees. He will equally be involved in nomination of people or appointing committee heads. And I think that would be a massive distraction to the president.
The essence of constitutional democracy is to give power to the people, which is what a lot of people are expecting that the 10th Parliament would do differently from this 9th Parliament that we have. But are you perhaps worried, or maybe you use the word suspicious of that happening? Because if the president-elect from day one is involved, as you said, appointing leadership in presiding offices, then is also going to be a repetition, more like a recycling of the kind of relationship and leadership that we had or that we have in the 9th Parliament to what we may see in the 10th Parliament, because that has always been the concern for Nigerians.
I will start by saying that if what happened or what is happening with the present Parliament continues in the 10th Parliament, Nigerians will at some point start agitating or start asking questions if we actually need the National Assembly. Because the presiding officer, the head of the National Assembly at some point was credited to have said that whatever the president wants, he's going to approve. Whatever it is. So there will be no scrutiny, and it's happening that almost everything is being approved. The other day they were discussing about, yesterday also, they were discussing about approving a budget for an agency that has actually implemented the budget. So if he continues that way, what is the point having the National Assembly? You see, the risk the president-elect is taking, not just that what he is doing by appointing presiding officers for the National Assembly is unconstitutional. The risk he's going to take is he may be boxed into an ego fight with the National Assembly if eventually the National Assembly members decide to elect their leaders. If they elect their leaders, for ego reasons, he may decide not to cooperate with them. And they will be having issues. But let me tell you, those issues is what Nigerians want, because it's going to be to the benefit of Nigerians. What it means that before you go to the National Assembly, you will know what you are sending to the National Assembly. You don't go and implement a budget and go for National Assembly for them to approve in arrears what you have approved for you to spend the money that you have already spent. I don't understand why such things will be happening. And I think it's a distraction in the interest of the president-elect. It's a distraction that he cannot afford at this moment. National Assembly, let them do their own thing, elect their leaders. If the irony of it is even the APC that wrote that letter communicating the appointment of the president-elect, of the presiding officer of the House of Reps, are not in the majority. The opposition in the National Assembly, they are in the majority. If they come together and say that we are going to elect one of them, because there is nothing in our laws
absolutely
that says that a presiding officer must be the party that has the majority. The opposition, if they come together, and I will be surprised if they don't attempt to do that, the opposition, if they come together and decide to elect one of them, even if it's COA party, Labour Party, PDP, as the speaker, they could do that to make a point. So that going forward, we don't do, you see, let's look back. What actually happened? The same thing when the former president decided that the Speaker of the House should be zoned to, what's the name of the lady from Oyo State?
Mulikat.
Mulikat. That rejection started the opposition that eventually made him lose the re-election. That is the fact. The emergence of Tambuwa and the Hedioha laid the foundation through which the opposition started, and they never stopped until he lost his election. So if the president-elect was alleged to have been involved in that scheme, if he was, he should learn from that he should work with anybody who has been elected as provided by the Constitution and even the standing orders. And I will advise the National Assembly, the elected members of the National Assembly, fantastic letter, they will keep it. After electing their presiding officer, the presiding officer will now read the correspondence they've got, because before going to the chambers, they have no presiding officer. How would you communicate people that have not come together? The only way you can communicate is when they're in the chambers. And the only way they will start any other business is after electing their presiding officer, going by their orders, their standing orders.
There are, of course, discordant tunes as a result of the decision by the APC NWC regarding how the principal offices in the National Assembly will be zoned. Primarily, there is a bone of contention that says that the North Central is left high and dry with no position at all, while the Northeast have 2 slots as against a lot of other permutations before the decision of the APC NWC.
Not the
how do you react? How do you react
not the
to
Northeast,
this?
I think is the Northwest.
The Northwest, sorry. The Northwest has 2 slots.
I asked Deputy Senate President and the Speaker.
Yeah, and
you see, so how do you expect the people from the North Central to go there and start and comply with that? Let me tell you, National Assembly leadership, we have 6 positions in Nigeria, and we have 6 geopolitical zones. It's only this APC government that has succeeded in ensuring that you have a zone that has 2 positions out of the first 6, while a zone like the Southeast has none. Because the Southwest had and they still have the Vice President and they still have the Speaker. The zones, if they are not represented, if somebody was saying Deputy Speaker, my brother, Deputy Speaker is involved in appropriation. He is the one that presides over the Constitutional Amendment Committee in the House. No matter how you look at it, he will chair the Committee of Constitutional Amendment. So every zone must have a say. There are 6 positions. There is no way every zone cannot get one. And we are talking about elective positions, and they don't compensate elective positions with an appointment. You say you will compensate. Who are you compensating? We have 6 positions. Common sense means that every zone should have one, irrespective of the position. So going forward, I don't think I'll be surprised. And in some zones, because the implication of the appointment is that people who are expected to be loyal to their parties will not run against the appointed candidate. I will continue to say appointed because it's not zoning. A lot of people were elected to the National Assembly because of their promise to their people that the only way they will have a say in the leadership of the National Assembly is to elect him. Somebody like Ojus, somebody like Izudaso. They moved around telling people, I will be the Senate President if APC wins the majority. That is only way. If you look at, there is no other way they would have won that election. It's not possible. If you were in the Southeast, there is no other way they would have won that election without that impression that, no, you need to, they met the leaders. We need to be smart about this. If we lose everything, we have lost. But put me there. So, per adventure, if we win the majority, I am qualified to be the Senate President, and we may not lose much. And you are now telling him not to run. Why won't he run? He's relevant on the issue because he's a senator. And the most important people there are the people who voted him. The Abaribe was denied tickets, or he had issues with PDP. But because his people accepted him, he went to Abga and was elected as a senator. So he's now a senator-elect, and his relevance is him being elected. So I'll be surprised if somebody like Ojus Okalo decides not to run. Because if he decides not to run, tomorrow he can't go back to his people and say, oh, no, vote me, I will go and try. But if he tries and loses, he goes back and says, oh, they rigged me, or I couldn't win it. But they will know that he tried, and they may decide to give him another opportunity. So his relevance is him being elected. If he's not elected, nobody will talk about it.
Okay, so I know that, I mean, in your article, you did express all of this, you know. And one of the things you said was that it would be better to stay away from publicly announcing individuals for various positions, which, you know, if avoided, could avoid unnecessary ego war, which is not good for the polity at the moment. And you also talked about that if this is not addressed, it could already create, you know, a more lingering crisis for the APC and the president-elect. But then one would also say, especially political interest groups, would say that the president-elect may be even more wise by trying to put his best foot forward for people he thinks may be loyal to his cause. But in terms of mentioning name, what do you think was the reason behind that? What does that do for the competition? Because it is a competition for the parliament. And then secondly, while you're at it, how can they avert this crisis?
Okay, if you read that article, I said publicly.
Yes.
Because if somebody like me will be interested in who becomes the presiding officer of the National Assembly, it will be unreasonable to expect that the president-elect will not be sympathetic to a particular candidate to win to lead the National Assembly. It will be unreasonable to expect that the national president-elect will just walk away and allow them to do their things. No. What he shouldn't do is to make an appointment, because he has just made an appointment. He could lobby privately, he could speak to his colleagues, he could speak to his friends, he could speak to his supporters. The disadvantage, having made this public announcement, if eventually the appointed candidate, I'm still using the word appointed, the appointed candidate loses on the floor of the National Assembly, naturally, he will not be happy. And if he's not happy, it could affect the way he will perceive and relate with the National Assembly. And if his perception of them is in the negative, the relationship will be in the negative. it could still lead to ego war. But I'm still saying that that ego war is not totally bad for us.
Okay. Why?
It's fantastic for the polity. Because if somebody is appointed, of course, your loyalty is to the people who appointed it. Look at all the efforts made to remove Saraki. It was unsuccessful because the people who elected him took ownership of his election. They took ownership. And they defended that. And so many things, some of these requests, you see, oh, these are approved, these are approved. When you write that you need a loan to the National Assembly, and please give me loan, 5 million, even here, in that communications, if you write a loan that Kakaki needs 5,000 naira to the managing director, he will want to know what is the 5,000 naira going to be used for. And the National Assembly said, please, we need the details of what you intend to do with the loan and all that. And the executive felt it was offensive. I don't think it was. It was not. So, for publicly doing that, his reputation is at stake. If he wins, he will be happy. Nigerians will not have any confidence in the National Assembly. That is the truth. The moment his candidates, in fact, it's a very massive disservice to even Godswill Akpabio that he has been appointed publicly. If the president has lobbied for him and all that, even the people who were persuaded to step down for him and all that, if he just ended that way, maybe what Chumahi there, I've been told I prefer the candidate and all that, I'm stepping down. It was his decision to step down. He adopted him as his consensus candidate. The moment you wrote a letter, you have made an appointment. And that appointment is not good, even for the person who made the appointment and the people who they are appointing for. A senator-elect from Kanu, AMPP, said it was an insult on the members of the National Assembly that they are not capable of electing their own. Why would they? He says, I'm sure you are not surprised that I'm on the same page with him. The National Assembly will do all they should, what they can, to distance themselves from those people that have been appointed to lead them.
Interesting. So with the incoming 10th Assembly as a basis for analysis, for example, let's locate this discourse in the zoning competency arrangement. Which do you think sits pretty with us? Should we zone our public offices, or should competency, character be a prerequisite for allowing people man sensitive public offices?
To answer this question, I will ask you if you are from the north. If you are from the north and the president-elect makes an announcement that going forward, that all the positions that he has found people who are competent in the south to take over all the positions are occupied by the people from the north in this regime, and he has found people competent in the north to occupy all the positions in the south, in the north. Switch positions. All the positions presently in the north will move to the south. All the positions presently in the south will move to the north. You will see that a lot of people will protest. Let me tell you, when you talk about competence, and you said you are making an appointment on the basis of competence, and you are removing it from a particular zone on the basis of competence, what you are saying indirectly is that you do not find somebody who is competent from a particular zone. And a lot of people will disagree with you, and I don't think it's right. In every zone of the federation, we have competent people. To balance power, you need people who are competent. Yes, but you still need to give each and every zone that sense of belonging that they have somebody there. And it has effects. It has effects. For instance, I'm from Oponine South local government. After the end of from the NSAS protest to date, I've said this before on this procedure, we've not had any functional police station in Nnewi South. We had about 4 divisions, one in Oboezi, Osumeyi, and Amish. They were all destroyed during the NSAS protest. Till date, the police do not have foot in any of the local government. Assuming that one of the IGs, one of the Deputy Inspector General of Police or the IG is from Obo, or is from Nnewi South. You don't think he will appreciate what we are doing? The man who is there has never been to Anambra. He doesn't know. He probably has never been to Nnewi. He does not understand why the man he has a zonal command in Nnewi, and you are telling him in Nnewi South that you do not have police. So when you talk about zoning is important, that so that people will have sense of belonging. They have somebody they will reach. And in every zone, you have people who are competent. And what leadership does in Nigeria is that if there's any crisis on any issue, the people from the zone will go to the highest political ranking person from their zone and complain, and the person will have the opportunity to be involved where a decision will be taken, and he will say, look at what my people are saying.
Absolutely. I know that this letter also did me to that there will be further engagement, better consultation with stakeholders to really get a consensus kind of an interesting outcome towards the 10th Parliament. But let's see how that works. You've just advised that they must avert the looming crisis, and I hope that they read and hear you loud and clear. Thank you so much, Barrister Bunike, for being on the show. Well, don't go anywhere. We already have Rena